Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Bill. It's an honor to work with you and to have been working with you and so many of the people in this room in the service of downtown Kansas City. Now I'm pleased to introduce Carol Coletta, a nationally recognized urbanist and civic leader known for her work on revitalizing cities and strengthening communities through smart, people-centered design. Most recently, she was recognized for her transformative impact on urban environments with the 2025 ULI Prize for Visionaries in Urban Development. She's held influential roles, including president and CEO of the Memphis River Parks Partnership, and has been a key voice at organizations such as the Knight Foundation, where she focused on community development and public spaces. Carol has a special knack for bringing together government, nonprofits, and local residents to reimagine how cities can be more vibrant, inclusive, and livable. Let's welcome Carol to the stage.
All right, are you ready to do this?
Mm-hmm. All right. Carol and I are going to discuss the power of our public spaces, where people come from different walks of life, come together, where interaction is encouraged, a sense of safety is created, and the result is community vibrancy and an enhanced quality of life. We want everyone to understand the legacy we are creating in downtown. There are groundbreaking and ground-making events underway. When this conversation ends, we want you to be inspired to help engage with us, become a community partner, join the Downtown Council, or invest in the nonprofit efforts we have established to support these initiatives. So let's go to it. Carol, downtown Kansas City is thriving and has become a magnet for real estate investment. We're thriving despite the headwinds of remote work and in-home entertainment and food delivery. What are some of the keys for downtown Kansas City to continue thriving in the future?
Well, you are thriving, and our walk yesterday was really impressive. So, and this, what's coming is really breathtaking. In fact, just, I hope everybody in this room will just take a moment and really appreciate what you have built and what is to come. Because I know the people in this room are the ones responsible for that, and it is really magnificent. I get a chance to be in different cities every week and see what they're doing and be with people like you, working very hard to rebuild their downtowns and make them really the heartbeat of their cities. And you have done a magnificent job here, so very well done, Kansas City. You would think, there are a lot of pressures on downtowns and with remote work and remote entertainment and remote food, but people still need people. And, when people are together, it's the way opportunity circulates, innovation accelerates, it's the way trust is built, it's what democracy is built on. And when downtowns are most exciting is when there are people visible, lots of people doing all kinds of things. Bill described it, they're entertaining, they're being entertained, they're working, they're living, they're out walking their dogs, they're going to ball games. That's when you feel that you're part of the human race, when you're with people. And And we underestimate the value of that today, being live. I love the fact that the generation now is putting away their devices and knitting together and playing mahjong and all kinds of things just to step back from the digital world and to re-enter the human race, because I think that's what makes us, it's what buoys us. And if you think about what people, how do you create a lot of people in downtown Kansas City? You do it with the assets that you've built and that you're building. You do it with the work of clean, green, and safe. We heard that today. You do it with density and exciting storefronts that keep people moving. You do it by building the assets that are coming online here very quickly. So and the streetcar, you join it all up, right? Make it easy to get from one thing to another so that people are really seeing not just work productivity, but life productivity. I was reading an article, some of you may have read it in the current issue of the Harvard Business Review. I was reading it this morning, and Richard Florida and colleagues were writing about the notion of return on place, which I thought was really this measurement framework of return on place, and that would look at how effectively a location enables collaboration, reduces friction, and strengthens culture. And I think those are good guidelines for thinking about what you build in the future and making sure that every project you consider is performing on those metrics. And just one of the major points in the article, which I think really argues for a dynamic downtown, is that we can't simply think about work productivity. We have to think about life productivity, and the two of those together. And so they're reconceiving the notion of where we work as knowledge campuses. And in a lot of ways, that's what you're building downtown with this great mixed-use, vibrant place. So I think the direction is absolutely the right one.
Oh, great. So let's talk a little bit more about mixed-use developments. We're building them here in downtown for the people of our city who will live, work, play, and learn in them. But the buildings themselves don't make the city interesting, as you've just indicated. They merely set the stage. Activated public places where people interact with each other, creating cultural experiences. They're essential for healthier communities. As we all saw in the video, we're working to create those spaces. The Green Line, Barney Alice Plaza, Luminary Park, the Rock Island Bridge, 18th and Vine Pedestrian Plaza, the West Bottoms. Whew, I have to take a breath, there's so many. Berkeley Riverfront Park, and now a new downtown ballpark. I think some people may wonder about the value of these great spaces we are building. We're spending a lot of money on them. So let's talk a little more about the return on investments and what we can expect to the return to the community on these great new spaces.
Well, it's very easy to make the case for investments like those in terms of their economic impact, and that's been talked about today, so I won't make it again, but that's very real. They also have a great deal to do with community identity, and that is very real. The way Kansas City will be remembered is by what it builds in its downtowns. And then you think about specifically the parks you're building and the trail to connect everything, which is great. That is social infrastructure for a city, right? Parks and green spaces, trails, that's social infrastructure. And again, it goes back to people need people. People need people for lots of good reasons. There's a professor at the University of Chicago named Nick Epley. And Nick did some really interesting work around meeting strangers. And no one thought they would enjoy it. He assigned his students to go onto L trains in Chicago and speak to strangers. And they all thought, oh, brother, what have I signed up for? This is not the class for me, because they all thought it would be an awful experience. Well, what happened is the people who spoke to strangers reported real happiness, and the people to whom they spoke also reported being happy. But the people who spoke, right, first, they were happier even than the people they spoke to. That sounds so ridiculous, but if you think about it, in a lot of ways, a good downtown is kind of a happiness machine, and you hold the key. It's about speaking to strangers and just getting that sense of we're all in this together. I think it is, and the spaces you're building, the parks, put that on steroids, right? It's more likely to happen in a fun and casual space that's flexible, like a park, versus on the city streets. So that's equally important to the economic impact.
I love that because, Kansas City is the kind of place where you actually smile and say hi or nod at anyone you see on the street. So I think that's a real characteristic of our town.
But do you say hello in an elevator? That's the real test.
I don't, because I'm kind of scared that I'm in the elevator at all.
Okay, you get a pass.
But you mentioned social infrastructure and parks, and a lot of people think about parks as wide open spaces. In our town, you might think of Loose Park or some of the parks out in the suburbs with baseball fields. But let's talk about what an urban park is like. Can you kind of talk about what's the difference between an urban public space and a larger park?
Yeah, well, a lot of parks that we build, it's interesting. Gale Architects developed a framework thinking about how to classify parks as hubs, havens, and hangouts. And havens tended to be in neighborhoods. And so when you go to a haven, you bring your full self. You're with people, the homophily kicks in, with people who are like you. Hangouts are less formal places. But hubs, I think of what you're building downtown. Hubs transcend neighborhoods, and that's a deep part of their value. I could say a lot more about this, but I won't go off into my wonky land. But trust me on this, it's a big part of creating opportunity to have hubs, and that's what a good urban park does. It's more heavily programmed. It's used in more day parts, so it has to be flexible, and the program needs to be really smart so that you can serve all of those different audiences at different times. But when they really sing is when you've got lots of different people, not just coexisting, but really cooperating and collaborating and having a good time together. That's when they're at their best.
Yeah, I love that, and especially cooperating and collaborating, because that's what we have to do to actually build the park.
Yes.
So, and then also to activate and manage the park. And I know one thing we were talking here in Kansas City is about nonprofit organizations managing some of these public spaces. And when you were the CEO of the Memphis River Parks Partnership, you all had a nonprofit management model there, right?
We did. So I was the accidental riverfront parks director for 7 years in Memphis. I was a Kresge Senior Fellow in the American Cities practice, and I got loaned to this organization, and then, like a lot of people in public service, right, you get seduced and you want to stay, but because it's very satisfying. We were a 501c3. We managed 5 miles of public property along the riverfront. And our ethos, our value was we're creating a riverfront for all. And we meant that, and we lived into it. And I think the value of it, we raised numbers astonish me. Well done. But we raised about $120 million when I was there. And there's several advantages to building and managing, I think, as a 501c3 or 501c6. I think you're a C6 as you are. One, you can hold the vision longer than most political terms because these things take time to germinate and raise money and then build and then manage over time. So I think that's an advantage. I also believe sometimes you are able, because of the constraints on government, sometimes you can't build as ambitiously as you would like to build, design and build as ambitiously as you could with an organizational structure that's more flexible. Also, it's very few people, they think, okay, I pay the government with my tax dollars. I don't want to pay the government again with my philanthropic dollars or with my, sponsorship money because it's just going to go into some big pool and I don't know where it will go. I think that it also feels a little more secure in a nonprofit organization. It's interesting, the Highline Network, which is a collection of 46 projects all around the country, similar to the ones you're going to build. They're all ambitious, they're all in hub locations. Not one of them was built or is managed by government. And I think for the reasons I just named. So you've got a lot of good company to have these assets developed and managed privately, but with the public interest at heart. And the day you forget the public interest is the day you don't deserve to manage them any longer. So keeping that front and center, and you and I were talking earlier, Ann, about the need to rent space, right? Rent the park space for revenue generation, because you've got to keep these things maintained and operated and safe and secure and green, and all of that costs money, and it does. But you can't ever let rentals and the private rentals get in the way of public use. And I think that will always be a tension with these spaces that we're so happy are great enough to generate revenue, because it helps, all of us with their upkeep, and we all want to see good assets maintained. But you have to be cautious about giving too many days away or too much time away for private use.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what you really said that's really important, public-private partnership. And that's what the Downtown Council is made from. That's why we have a room full of the public and the private sector today. And it kind of leads to my next question, which is about inclusive placemaking and civic spaces. We're talking about developing what we call program partners for our new public spaces, which would be nonprofits and small businesses that can program Barney Alice Plaza and Luminary Park with activations ranging from yoga classes to field trips. And what's your experience with partnering with these organizations? Do you think will they help us keep the public in mind?
Well, they are the public, right? They are community organizations, they're nonprofits, they emerge from the community. As you said, partnerships are always a plus. I don't think you can ever think that it's going to make your role a whole lot easier because you still have to coordinate. Someone still has to hold the vision for the space. But it's always great when you can work with community partners. It's good for them. They grow their audience, they grow their market, they grow their exposure, and you get the variety and the multiple points of view that make the space interesting. So it's always great to have that.
Right. Well, let's talk about another way we can activate space, which is with art. Art is a great connector. It has a huge impact on public spaces. Art in the Loop, program I helped develop and run, and yes, we're taking donations. Art in the Loop commissions local artists to activate downtown Kansas City each summer. We exhibit art on the streetcar shelters and streetcars and murals, accompanied with performance series. And the city has an incredible 1% for Art program that helps activate our many spaces. Public art's so important, aesthetics, urban design, engagement. Based on your experience, how does public art increase the value of public spaces?
It's funny, one of the, in the last park I built called Tomley Park, one of the best things we did was use the art to drive the narrative about the park's namesake. This park was named for a man, Tom Lee, who in 1925 saved 39 people from drowning in the Mississippi River. He was black, they were white. He was a skiff boat operator on the Mississippi River, and they were engineers. So they were very different in all sorts of ways. And there's a long story about the park's naming that you don't want to hear, but we used the art to tell his story, and we used sculpture. There was one realistic sculpture that we had inherited of him saving someone. The Astor Gates, multi-talented artist based in Chicago, did a piece for us called A Monument to Listening, which was also in honor of Tom Lee. We used poetry and spoken word that we commissioned every year about the story. So one of the things that art did for us was drove a narrative about the place that was just another layer of ways people could, it was another layer of value on the place we made. And I think art is particularly good at that. I just want to say a couple of other things about it. Art can, not always, but can really invite participation, which is one of the most important things I believe public space can do, is inviting people to participate together. And the informal arts, I mean, not just art on a pedestal, but the informal arts, let's dance together, let's skate together, let's sing together, we've done it all, and Tom Lee, and those were some of them. We paraded together, we made parade objects. Yeah, that was fun. We made these wonderful, you should see the images. We made these parade objects and then paraded through the park. I mean, and I say we, the community made these parade objects and they made their own parade. But all of that was informal arts that brought people together and created across very different demographics, which I think is particularly valuable. So art can perform in ways that it's beautiful, it's provocative, it makes me think. It calms me down, or it revs me up, and I love all of that, but I think it also has such power around narrative and participation that I would just urge you, as you're thinking about your art program, to think broadly about those opportunities.
I love that. I think we have a lot to say and a lot to connect about. So, Carol, let me ask my last question. Kansas City is about to get a spotlight that most communities only dream about as one of the 10 host cities for the World Cup. This promises to be transformative for downtown and our region. So I'd welcome your thoughts about this opportunity and any other final thoughts you'd like to share.
Well, I heard the mayor speak, who I think gave the perfect speech. I told him that was the perfect speech. Could I take you home? I didn't ask him that, but now I might ask him. But he talked about, ask you to raise your hands if you were at the 25?
2015.
2015. Oh, it's been so long ago. Hello, Royals, come on. So I know most teams never get there. That was only a joke. I love the Royals. But he asked people who had been there. Point is, I had a board member say this to me once, nostalgia is the most powerful hallucinogenic. So when people are on your streets celebrating their being at the World Cup, this sort of once-in-a-lifetime experience for a lot of people, or a ritual for others, they are going to remember Kansas City as the most vibrant, lively, fun place they've ever been. And they won't remember it just that night or the next day. They will remember it for the rest of their lives. And when someone asks them, okay, raise your hand if you were at, they will proudly raise their hand, and it will be one of the best memories of their lives. All you need to do is keep doing what you're doing, and then your role when they're here is to celebrate alongside them, say hello, make them feel great about being here and being among friends who want to celebrate alongside them. They will go home and they will think nothing but good thoughts about your city, and you will feel better as well because you will also have seen it at its most alive and its most enjoyed by people around the world. What could be better?
Thank you so much, Carol. I think we should all feel proud of the progress we're making as a community, from the riverfront and Current Landing to the future Green Line Recreational Trail, Rock Island Bridge, Barney Alice Plaza, Luminary Park, bridging the highway right outside these doors, exciting new downtown ballpark. This is happening right now. This is the foundation upon which we will build our tomorrow, our legacy for future generations. And now we need everyone's help. So will you join us in continuing to build a more welcoming, vibrant downtown today and for generations to come? Together, we can increase our investment in dynamic public spaces that make downtown Kansas City an exceptional place for all to live, work, play, and learn. So please scan the QR code on the screen or on the back of your program to learn how you can make an impact. As I said, you could join the Downtown Council and help us spread the word about downtown's revitalization. You can support our efforts to create more green spaces and public gathering places in the heart of Kansas City. You could invest in transformational projects like Luminary Park, the Green Line, the Beehive, which is our health and housing collective, Launch KC, and Art in the Loop, through financial contributions or program partnerships while you socialize these projects. Thank you, Carol, for sharing your insights today, and thank you all for joining us.
Thank you to all those who work tirelessly to make today and every day a tremendous success. I personally also want to take this time to thank my staff at Parson and Associates for allowing me the time. Well, yeah, there you go. For allowing me to have the time to serve this forward-thinking organization. Look around. We have certainly come a long way over these past 20 plus years. Lastly, I want to thank you. Thank you all for attending today and for your continued support throughout the year. What an amazing time it is to be in Kansas City. I wish you blessings upon the new year, and we will see you next year. Take care.